Today on the podcast, we have Aaron from Landano. Welcome to the podcast, Aaron.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. Great to be here.
We were talking a bit earlier about Landano, and I'm hoping you can just give us a broad overview of what the company's mission is and what problem you're solving.
Yeah, well, first I should probably zoom out a little bit and kind of explain how I got to this, journey myself, this point in my journey. Um, First of all, Landano is a very sort of real world oriented, solution to a problem that exists for a lot of people. And through my career, I've got a background in urban planning, urban design, land development on, I don't know, 3 continents over the last 20 years or so at a variety of different scales, from very local to very regional, and developing all kinds of solutions, working in private development, kind of across the various manifestations of that sort of thing. And so I've also done a lot of research, urban economics research, into how to protect the tenure of residents and communities while also still encouraging like economic development and new housing construction. What I termed in my research gentrification without displacement. And so I was working in that space, doing research in that space, and at one point I was working for a luxury condo company, a company that was developing and marketing what we called super prime real estate up and down the west coast of North America. And we had a nonprofit that was providing housing for not unhoused people, but people who had homes in developing economies, developing regions of the world. Like our examples were Cambodia and El Salvador, because their homes were threatened by a variety of issues, which can all kind of be collected into under the umbrella of tenure and security, right? And from hanging out with these people at our nonprofit, I started realizing that these people had homes, these people had roofs over their heads, and they were quite functional. They liked their homes. They didn't necessarily want to move, but which was part of the problem. They may be forced to move at any point because they couldn't prove they had rights to their property. And so it wasn't an issue of them needing a new home. They just needed to be able to prove they had rights to their home. And really all that we were providing them through our nonprofit was not a new home, although that, it's kind of nice to get a brand new home. It was the legal structure. It was the clean title that came with that new home, because it was being built on land that, we had made sure we had clean title to. And then we were absolutely deeding over very cleanly title to the residents. So that was the service we were providing, was tenure security, not protection against the elements or of the physical structure of a home. And right about that time, this was, a few years ago, this was when blockchain was really kind of kicking off and people were talking about different use cases for blockchain. So, and one of the fantastic use cases people were talking about was, solving this messy problem of how, even in more trusted regimes and environments and jurisdictions, it can take more than a month to transact, to sell or buy a piece of property, to transfer property ownership from one person to another. In North America anyway, there's a whole industry, the title insurance industry, that exists just to do research and try to provide some assurance that people actually own what they're selling in terms of property. And it costs a lot. It takes a lot of time. It's a very high friction kind of thing. And blockchain's designed to solve these kinds of problems, right? It's got, it's transparent, it's relatively fraud resistant and fraud proof, and transactions can happen in a matter of moments with a lot of security, as long as you've got everything set up right. And so that was kicking around in my head for a while. And then 2 or 3 years ago, I partnered up with my current partner, Doris, and we decided to take this further and really build something. And so we started, our mission, our company mission is property rights secured for everyone. That's the idea here, because there's something these numbers are hard to really pin down, but something like 5 billion people around the world, more than half of the world can't prove they have rights to their own home. And 1 billion of those people live with persistent, like on a almost daily basis, worry about, losing their home in a more immediate sense. And the valuation, if you want to get in economic terms about it, something like $100 trillion is the potential worth of all the world's undocumented real estate, around the world.
So,
And yeah.
I mean, it really sounds like the problem you're describing. The problem I think we're all very familiar with is like slow and inefficient governments and court systems that take a lot of time. And, kind of layering on like the land issue is kind of primary to everybody's survival and existence. I'm trying to picture, I guess my lived experience being in Costa Rica for the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
When rainy season comes, the lead story on the news is often somebody who's along a river who's been washed away in the storm, and these tragedies happen. And what I've come to learn is that people will build again where they don't have title, and sometimes in dangerous situations. So that's kind of one piece of where I've seen it in real life. And I think another piece is, sometimes I've seen cases where entire communities have been built in that. I know really not far from here, they kind of were protesting as they were potentially going to be removed, and shut down the highway. Is that the kind of situation you're seeing? Like those things?
And there are so many. Everybody's got a story just like that is close to their own experience. But that's a great example. In many cases like that, I don't know the specifics of that particular example, but I would bet that a lot of those people, maybe they do have title, or maybe they, legally they have a right to their land in some sort of way, whether it's, strict full ownership, fee simple, or maybe they have some kind of long-term tenure rights to farm or just live on that land in some sort of way. Like legally, if they had access to legal help and wanted to hire a lawyer, they could probably, get the right documentation in some sort of way and then prove they own this land, but sometimes you have to pay, quote unquote fees, which look a lot like bribes sometimes to the right official. And, there's a lot of ways in which people like that fall through the cracks, even if in concept, they actually do have right to their land. And that's a lot more like the problem we're trying to solve. Like a great example that I like to point at just really recently, like within the last year, this is a huge problem in sub-Saharan Africa, right? And so there was one local leader in northern Ghana who was double dealing. He was like issuing title to
family and friends,
people at once, for the same plot of land. And this
that sounds like Canada.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, this can be an issue even in the most trusted jurisdictions. Like a lot of, I've spent a lot of time in Vancouver. That's where I lived until very recently. And, a lot of real estate money is flying there, just like landing there from other parts of the world that are less trusted, simply because the Canadian jurisdiction regime is more trusted. But it's still not that, you can still contest stuff. Now think about somewhere like northern Ghana, where nothing's on paper, even though whatever paper there is says people who are living on this land have full right to it. Okay, well, how do you guarantee that? Like just recently, this chief that I was talking about in northern Ghana, his entire village rose up against him and kicked him out of his home, burnt his house. The entire village ended up getting burnt in a riot situation, and 50,000 people were displaced and had to flee next door to Cote d'Ivoire. This is happening. This is like an actual issue. Like there are major disruptions happening around the world because of title disputes and tenure insecurity. And, there's so many different ways this manifests. In different cities in India, something like 6% of all real estate transactions are actually on book, which means nobody can really prove anything. And what we've built is a two-tier solution to this, right? We've got a solution for small governments to manage their property and build trust and also, get a little proper revenue stream so they can manage their land properly. A better way for people to pay taxes and fees that don't look and feel like bribes anymore. And also a way for governments to kind of understand what's going on in their community and kind of like, be able to like protect their community from outside pressure. And then that's the product we're calling Landano Community. It's basically a white label platform for, what you would call urban planning. Like there's, it's different ways to manage rights, what I would call zoning in a more, developed, city. But really it's just like managing what rights people have to their land through an application process.
So
Yeah.
I guess the obvious question is, I mean, if half the world is impacted by this, like why aren't other people doing this? Like where's the competition?
Well, a lot of it's perception. The perception is usually that to do this would be threatening to the status quo, to whatever the existing regime is for managing that sort of thing, rather than actually helpful to them. And a lot of previous efforts have been perceived as adding to an already confusing and burdensome process rather than simplifying it. This has been attempted in various places around the world, Colombia. Um, but it's finally starting to get some traction in different places. I think, one county in New Jersey and Dubai, the government of Dubai, these are two great examples where it's actually getting some traction. So, but fundamentally, the issue is, if it's one of perception, as I said. We're not competing against governments. We're looking to partner with them. And so what looks like an absolute vacuum of competition is really that, because any competition would actually be our partners or our customers. And yeah, I should mention our other product that's newer, Landano Home, that we're still we're still developing, and we can talk more about, our tech stack issues later. But Landano Home is more, I don't know, it's more kind of, I don't know, it's a little looser. I don't want to say that because then that does sound like it is threatening to kind of any kind of regime. But basically, it's available to anybody or anywhere in the world that wants to be able to prove they have rights to their, home or land or anything like that, but don't have a government system that is willing to help them out with that, or is accessible to them in some sort of way. And so it is essentially, a geographical interface, a GIS interface, where you can trace out a plot of land, um, and then upload a series of documents or various media. Maybe it's you doing a video tour around the land or taking pictures of a fence or a boundary marker, or maybe you're uploading PDFs of different whatever documentation you may have. Maybe that's some kind of something that looks like a title, something you inherited, or maybe it's a utility bill, anything. And then also there are ways for your neighbors or other, local authorities, people to support your claim, to attest to it and bolster it. So you build this collection of evidence for something that, in any other system, like a government title would be what you need, right? But maybe that doesn't work for you wherever you are in the world or whatever situation you've got in the world. And so,
Can we dig into that? Like, what would that situation be?
well, like I've given two examples already, like Northern Ghana, Sub-Saharan Africa. We're working with, and then also maybe India. Like, it's a way for you to get the next best thing, as close to government issued title as you can. It's the next best thing. So based on wherever you are in the world and your particular situation, we've got an AI agent that will give you a checklist of things to collect that will get you as close as you can to what you need to replicate the same thing as a government issued title without the proper signatures and stamps or whatever. So if and when maybe the day comes when that system becomes something that is available for you to interface with or interact with or use, you've got everything ready. And in the meantime, you've got something that's just about as good as you can get without having the same thing. You've got a collection of media and information and documentation and evidence that really should show that you have right to this land. And then that also, there are there are banks that also gives you access to credit markets, because there are banks that would love to loan to people who have underdocumented assets like land, immovable assets. And so, we've already been talking to, some banks in locations like this in Ghana, Mozambique, starting a conversation in Kenya and India soon. And, maybe Zambia, but Zambia is a little bit more confusing in terms of how like land ownership is handled there. Anyway, like access to credit markets is a big deal, right? For also building 10-year security, because it's like, it's how you build generational wealth for most people in the northern part of the world.
And invest in technology and
Yeah.
invest in economic growth. I mean, it's literally everything. I mean, so, property rights are obviously fundamental to, any of the discussions we have. And, I see a lot of intersection in our thinking in terms of credit markets and providing access. The two threads I want to pull on, and I guess they're a bit related, is the transparency and the technology, right? And we're sitting here, operating private businesses with every incentive to make the product good for the end consumer. Nobody's forcing people to use it. They have free will. And I find because of that, you see a lot of private solutions that are really light years ahead of where government is. And, I know there's an established legal process and we need to do things on pretty embossed paper that's sometimes colorful and have fancy signatures. But technology really, with what you're talking about, once that information is captured, especially when you're talking about the flow through in terms of taxes, in terms of, like, I was thinking about the assessments they do in Canada, like all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like we've built, government out the wazoo, and we just keep investing in more and more government. But maybe what we need is technology instead of more people. And just the massive unlock in transparency that brings. I mean, it's so obvious, isn't it? Who's fighting this?
More technology, less people. Probably everybody, every white collar, mid-tier or low tier. There's a lot of pushback against replacing people with technology, right? And so
no, but when the technology when the technology is able to do it in a more efficient way, like, is there no responsibility for public sector to provide these services efficiently?
That's why what we're doing is such a great application of new tech, right? Because it helps people out. It's not taking anybody's job. It helps people who already, it helps government workers do their job better.
More concerned for the taxpayer.
What?
More concerned for the taxpayer, I guess.
Well, I mean, people, hopefully you'll, in a I know this sounds like some kind of fantasy, but like the ideal would be that you get something for what you're paying in taxes, right? Right now a lot of people are living in insecurity, worrying about their land on a day-to-day basis, much less worrying about whether they have access to credit markets that can build generational wealth with this land that they may or may not even have rights. They may get kicked off of on, sooner or later, maybe sooner. So there's like a real immediate concern about security, and then there's like a longer term security issue. And this technology just helps with that. It helps governments, even if you're a government that is only really focused on like revenue collection, well, this can help you with that. Now you don't have to like deal in what I like to call the chicken and whiskey economy, where people bring you like non-currency goods. It's a relationship building kind of thing that happens in a lot of rural areas in developing economies. Well, great, but that doesn't help you join the world's economy, and it doesn't help you build generational wealth. If what you want to do is collect revenue, then this is a platform for you to do that in a way that people trust on both ends, and doesn't lend itself to like, fraudulent dealings or double dealings or anything like that. The blockchain element of this is really secondary, at least. It underpins the whole, trust structure of everything, but it's invisible to the user unless you want to look at it. With every transaction we handle on platform, you can always click a little box that says, see this on blockchain, see the actual evidence of it if that's what you want to do. But really,
that's the same as our when we send somebody a confirmation, they can just click on the link and then it brings up a block explorer and they can see the transaction.
Sure. Perfect. Yeah, sure. But most of these people, most of our customers, we don't want to have to like educate anybody in like what they're looking at or how blockchain works. We just want the benefits of blockchain to essentially be magic and work for people and be trusted.
Yeah. So with the blockchain, and I know maybe you're looking at a change of blockchain, I'm really curious about the tech and operational challenges you run into.
Right. So we 3 years ago, we chose Cardano. We were really invested in Cardano because we liked what its approach to building itself. It's very research based, very design based, very community responsive, and it was also kind of set out with a mission to be a great place to efficiently transact and securely store records and things like that. Okay, it's accomplished many of these things. So, but like longer term, there is a real concern, if you're dealing with record storage, long term is a major factor that you want to consider. For whatever reason, they haven't been able to like build a security of like long term existence, and I know there's like a real snowball effect. Like the more people that leave, the less possible that's going to be. But we've had to think about the business, and so we're considering switching our stack to using Polygon, which is, it's on Ethereum. It's a layer 2 blockchain on Ethereum. And the primary reason for that, other than like Cardano's, long-term questions, and we still love Cardano, there's still, we still have, a lot of dealings with people in the Cardano world. They're fantastic. I've had nothing but like, delightful interactions with everybody in the Cardano. But as things move on, there's, with any new industry, there's always consolidation and people kind of, like there will always be consolidation, and we're seeing that happening. And one of the things that's happening is there was a blockchain standard that's been developed called ERC, I think it's 3643. Anyway, it's just a standard that exists, unfortunately, only on Ethereum-based chains for storing real-world assets. And this will be how all real-world assets are stored on-chain, I think, in the very near future. And to be compliant with that, we had to move to something that was built on Ethereum to comply with that standard. This is going to be how, I think anybody that really cares about this in a technical way, banks, whoever, anybody that really wants to like, get some serious understanding that, whatever this new thing is we're looking at here on Landano is actually following proper standards and protocol. And so there's different ISO standards based on land administration domain models that we're following. And there's this ERC 3643, if I'm remembering that correctly, that is, it's all about standards for how to store, in our case, geographical information and title information and, all sorts of things that add up to real estate on blockchain and being able to transact it confidently in the future.
This sounds like a big project. Good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks.
It's really interesting. I guess it's like the technology is already, well advanced from where reality is. Seems to be a theme. Is there anything that can accelerate, the convergence of those two things? Or, how do you see it evolving in the space? Just gradual, step by step?
Well, I mean, no. Yeah, I mean, I mean, really, there's like two speeds you can go at this. One is based on building trust at the government level, and that can be very slow. Government adoption can be very slow, but the other one is, can be slow, 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 and then very fast, and that's based at more of a grassroots level. The more people at a grassroots level that use this or use us or apply for a loan using our platform, the more trust gets built and the more transactions that happen on a platform like ours. You can easily imagine a world where quite quickly, well, not quickly, but once you hit that certain threshold of critical mass, things will happen quickly, where things quit moving slowly. And to get something done, you have to be on a platform like this. You have to have your property on a platform like this.
So,
So, yeah, go ahead.
no, sorry, I cut you off.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues that play into how that hockey stick of a curve develops. A lot of it's investment. Do investors understand what you're talking about? Have they invested in something like that before, whether it's prop tech, fintech, blockchain related businesses? I like to talk about the blockchain element of this as like really secondary. It's just like kind of the secret sauce inside the tech of how we make sure things work. But on the other hand, if you're talking to like a real, blockchain, enthusiastic investor or partner, that's what they want to hear about. So it's kind of hard to tell that story in two different ways, and that's part of why we're looking at moving to Polygon as well, because it's just kind of like a bigger space of people who are like understanding what you're talking about. It's less risky. Um, and yeah, and then just like getting the development done at a speed, getting our product tested. Um, we were all set to launch our Landano home in a few test markets just a couple of months ago, and then we had some tech stack issues, and it turned into us looking at migrating our whole stack to also we built on, I should mention this, we built everything in a low code platform because it's what institutions generally like to see and are familiar with and comfortable with. Mendex specifically is the one we've been using. There's a lot of institutional stuff that's been built on Mendex, and our CTO is like very experienced in that world. But with the rise of AI based coding, we've gone from kind of a low code to the rise of no code. It's a lot easier to build outside a low code environment because there are a lot of specific restrictions that you can't, that make things a lot slower and harder to tweak in a low code environment, right? Because you're just moving modules around, and like, it's a lot harder to build something that's tailored to something that itself might be a little bit unusual. And, that specifically, Cardano's got an identity wallet that is called Meridian now, which it's a wonderful thing when it works, but right, it's still kind of like not ready for prime time yet. And so we've to prove people's identity through using our so far chosen blockchain. It has been quite a journey of bespoke tailoring and like, duct tape and bubble gum and rubber band kind of ad hoc solutions to things that may change again at some time. There's a lot of things that have slowed us down and like caused delays because we're moving in this Mendex low code environment. That once we jump out to something like Python, I don't think we'll have issues with that anymore. We'll be able to just tailor something quite specifically.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with the building and your mission. Just a couple things to end with. If you have any advice for builders, and also where can people find you to reach out?
Right. Well, yeah, advice for builders is, think ahead, think about the future, think about your scaling possibilities. A lot of the things I've mentioned already are like things that, are worth thinking about, and even, even 2 years ago when we were choosing Cardano, we were thinking about these things. So I think it's important to stay flexible, build in a way that maintains your flexibility, be ready to like pivot if you need to, for sure, and just think about who your customers are and be in communication with them on as much as you possibly can. Make sure you're building something they want and will use. I come from a very, pragmatic background, and a lot of the people I run into in the development space don't like to think in those terms. They just like to build, and then, oh, maybe it's this cute little thing that no one's ever going to use. Well, you should think about who's going to use it and talk to those people and make sure you're building something they want to use. That's how your business is going to survive. That's how your business is going to that's how you're going to make money. So that is just one piece of advice. Like our main pivot, our really big pivot has been to, it took a couple of people to tell us about access to credit markets instead of just like securing property, but it turns out that in rural Ghana alone, between 200 million and 900 million USD worth of, not real estate, but just loans. The value of the loans is sitting out there waiting to be lent once people have secured property that they can use as, assets to lend against. And that's just Ghana, There's so much money out there that once the light bulb goes on over your head, and you can pivot to do it responsibly and responsively, it's there. So just being able to pivot and think about your scaling, and that's just the advice I have, I'd say.
Well, really nice to connect, Aaron, and good luck with the mission and the building, and look forward to reconnecting soon.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So you can find us. You can find me. I am at Amoguin, Amoguin. My name's Aaron Mogwin, and you can. That is all my socials everywhere: Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of it. You can find Landano. Landano.io is our website, and you can find links to everything there for sure. And I'd love to hear from anyone. Questions, thoughts. I will see your email. You can email me at aaron@landano.io, aaron@landano.io.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend, Aaron. We'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kevin. Great to talk to you.
You too.